While Teo was carefully considering his reward options, the spirit interrupted him and warned him that this was undoubtedly a trap. Teo admitted that he was well aware that the Flame Emperor had chosen the Devil's reward, but the Fire Bastard was still on the 99th floor, not the 40th floor, so Teo decided that the Demon King's reward should be a trap. The spirit, who couldn't climb the 99th floor alone, fervently advised him not to fall into the trap. With his current skills, he couldn't defeat the top 99 tenants, let alone conquer the 99th floor. Interested in how strong the 99th Teo's boss was, he questioned the spirit and was answered that there were no monster bosses on that floor. Instead, there was something much more dangerous there. As the spirit's behavior changed, Teo became more and more concerned. He was scared and confused. However, the spirit reluctantly acknowledged that Teo was making progress, encouraging him to keep going and assuring him that he would automatically overcome the 99th floor. Upon reflection, Teo made a decision. He decided to abandon his current one and take only the safest paths, disregarding the reward. He decided to observe the situation. For the moment, the spirit doubted his choice, but Teo emphasized and reassured him that he was willing to sacrifice the battle to win the war. Teo turned to the group and announced that the reward on the 11th floor had appeared in front of him. He was tired of waiting for quests, so the Black Witch expressed relief. She also added that once he picked the reward, the line would go to the next person, but he had already informed everyone that he had decided not to choose the award. This shocked everyone and made them question his choice. A notification appeared that Teo hadn't chosen a stage reward. The goddess of protection questioned his decision, and the Demon King laughed menacingly in the autumn rain. The knight, in a state of shock, faced him, demanding an explanation. The Sword Saint, as second in rank, understood Teo's attention, but questioned the need to completely refuse the reward. Teo thanked him for his concern, but stood by his opinion, not regretting anything. Calmed by Teo's reaction, the Sword Saint made his choice in favor of the goddess of protection and Grand Master of the Empire. Suddenly, soldiers appeared and swore allegiance to the Sword Saint, recognizing him as the most powerful swordsman of the Empire. Observing the situation, the investigator recognized the roles and compared it to a game of Mafia. Using the skill, the investigator revealed both rewards to everyone. The leader expressed surprise at the revelation about the 99th floor, and Black Witch looked stunned. The investigator explained the dynamic, calling those who chose the goddess a knight and the Devil King a traitor. But she emphasized that traitors have a significant disadvantage compared to playing Mafia. They had 9 knights on their side and confirmed their ability to identify traitors only if they trusted her. The investigator emphasized that the game was in the knights' favor, as evidenced by their support. Hunter Teo's decision to refuse the reward seemed unnecessary in this context. Respecting Teo's choice, the investigator proceeded to select the Empire's top generals. The soldiers who had sworn allegiance to the Empire's highest flag appeared again, affirming their support for the decision. The leader understood the importance of choosing an award, and confidently chose the captain of the guard. The knight followed suit and chose the Director General of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, figuring it was the most common choice. The Black Witch decided to become Prime Minister and expressed her confidence that no one would side with the Demon King. She reminded them that if no one chose her, the reward would disappear. The Countess chose the Minister of Finance and confidently announced her choice. When everyone was done choosing their awards, a message popped up saying the giveaway was over. The spirit expressed concern to Teo and asked if this was really the right decision. Teo assured the spirit that it was the right decision. The message also said that all the winners had been selected. The report said that one person did not receive an award, 8 received the Goddess Award, and 1 received the Demon King Award. The Black Witch angrily scolded the others, emphasizing her earlier warning not to choose the Demon King's prize. The investigator smiled and expressed surprise that they had chosen the Demon King's prize despite the extremely unfavorable situation. The leader felt the same tension he had felt during the sweep of the first part of the tower, and anticipated that today would be the day he would have to shake his head. The Countess remembered the past when the 5 guilds were the 10 guilds, and it was the cause of many deaths. The Black Witch ordered the knight to interrogate everyone with a lie detector and not to miss a single person. She declared her position as leader of the Black Dragons and expressed her determination to give the traitor the most agonizing death for daring to betray them. She demanded that the knight immediately interrogate everyone present, threatening to kill anyone who tried to evade the interrogation. The knight asked the hunter Teo the first question. Even though Teo refused the reward, the knight still asked if he chose the Demon King's reward. Teo honestly answered no. The knight confirmed that it was true. He then turned to the Sword Saint and asked if he had chosen the Demon King's reward. The Sword Saint swore on his honor that he had not. The investigator, the leader, and the Countess also denied involvement in the betrayal. The knight confirmed to the Black Witch that everyone was telling the truth. When the Black Witch was asked about the Demon King's choice of reward, she also denied it, and the knight confirmed that it was true. The leader intervened and asked who they would be if there were no traitors among the 10. The knight suggested that traitors might have the ability to hide or conceal lies, or that there might be multiple personalities among them. The Sword Saint looked at the knights and accused them of being dirty traitors. The Black Witch asked if he suspected them at this point. He answered in the affirmative, suggesting that even if the knight wasn't lying, she might have lied to protect the 5 great guilds. The knight acknowledged that she could be a traitor and emphasized that it was important not to lose his temper. He reminded everyone of the countless obstacles they had overcome together and encouraged them to trust each other again. The investigator smiled and replied that it was hard to trust anyone outside of the 5 main guilds. He believed that building trust took time and patience, which not everyone could possess at the moment. Knight realized that now was not the time to prioritize efficiency. However, the investigator used his saint technique, Divine Body, and ordered the leader to take care of the rank 10 hunter. The knight was against it. But the investigator used another holy technique, Divine Transmission, and appeared behind the back of the rank 8 hunter, finishing him off. The leader did the same to a rank 10 hunter. 2 reports appeared, confirming that the slain warriors were not the Demon King's subjects. The Sword Saint drew his sword and confronted the investigator, calling them disgusting and accusing them of showing their true colors. He threatened them to stop immediately. However, the investigator used his holy technique again and finished off a rank 9 hunter who was trying to escape. Teo watched in shock as another message appeared, announcing the death of another warrior who was not a servant of the Demon King. The investigator realized it wasn't one of those 3 and the situation became more complicated. He was sure that the traitor was one of them, but now it meant that the culprit was among them and their 10 years of trust was about to crumble. The knight cried out in frustration and asked everyone to wait and remain calm. He was disappointed that his request was ignored. The investigator claimed to be calm and stated that she had logically concluded that the 3 warriors were the most likely to be traitors. She admitted her mistake but noted that at least the media would not have access to this information. Suddenly, the Sword Saint attacked the investigator and cut off one of his hands. The leader intervened and started grabbing the Sword Saint, urging him to inform him before he killed someone. The investigator realized that the situation had become more complicated. Without both hands, He couldn't use the saint's techniques effectively. He apologized to everyone for not being able to help him alone. The leader, fearing for his life, turned to someone for help. The knight turned to Teo, who trusted him with everything without choosing a reward. He believed that if Teo was innocent and impartial, he could stop the sword saint. The investigator put a healing potion on his hand and offered to hand over power to Teo, who he believed was absolutely not a traitor. He expressed his willingness to abide by any decision Teo made as long as the traitor was caught, as he didn't trust his judgment. In a conversation with Spirit, Teo expressed his distrust of the powers and circumstances that the knight and investigator had given him. Spirit congratulated him on his promotion and noted that Teo was probably the reason for his refusal to accept the reward. Teo regretted the tense atmosphere among the rentiers and the deaths. He realized that he would be forced to back down. Teo asked the knight if the investigator had always been like this. The knight explained that religious conflicts had been a serious problem when he first came to the tower, and there were constant skirmishes between different religions and sects here. The only way he knew of to resolve such conflicts was for an investigator to show up and kill them all. Teo thought about the media covering up the peaceful understanding between religions and realized that the truth was different from what he believed. The investigator apologized for his oversight and asked Teo to stop the sword saint in exchange for full power. Teo expressed his displeasure but agreed to talk about it later. He then yelled at the sword saint, urging him to stop fighting and offering to talk. He even offered to invite his granddaughter and date her when she came to the tower. He even said that he would be his grandson and tried to defuse the situation. The man replied coldly, however. He said he had stopped fighting not because of Teo's words, but because he realized that he could kill them when he wanted to and catch the traitors before they were killed. When the leader asked if it was over, Teo urged everyone to calm down. He admitted that he didn't know who the traitor was and might not even be able to find him. Instead, he suggested that they focus on another goal: killing the Demon King. The knight inquired as to how this goal could be accomplished. The fact that the traitor had chosen the Demon King as a reward suggested that they intended to attempt to attack the life of a follower of the goddess. Teo pointed out that the Demon King's core was on the 20th floor and suggested that they defeat it first. In that case, the reward associated with the traitor would disappear. Teo felt that no matter how the tower tried to test them, the solution would always be simple. Just then, a message came up that a quest was being given on the 12th floor. Teo looked at the others and urged them to climb the tower and destroy the Demon King's core. When they reached the 12th floor, a message appeared saying that the quest on the 12th floor had begun. When they looked back, they saw a red rain falling on them. The soldiers of the Empire were horrified, recognizing it as the Reign of Terror, a sign of the Demon King's presence. The leader expressed confusion, wondering why everyone was suddenly reacting this way. He wondered if this was all a script and why the Empire was acting this way. Teo stepped forward and broke the window to see better. He saw a huge figure standing outside and realized that the Demon King had appeared before him. The Demon King spoke, mocking them for thinking that bringing people from another world and giving them high positions would turn them into shields. The Demon King stated that no matter how many warriors and knights they summoned, they were still humans, and pitied them for their foolishness. Those who do not see humans as humans will be consumed by their malice. When Teo opened the minimap, he found that they were surrounded by a large number of demons. A quest message appeared, stating that their task was to bravely fight the Demon King's army and protect the supply lines. The king, sensing danger, appeared. He could summon monsters at will, and his target was the capital, the heart of the empire. Fortunately, the king was forced to manifest away from the city, so his power was weakened. Their goal was to stop the king. If they lost the battle, it would prevent the opening of the 13th floor. The leader expressed his shock and disappointment, wondering if this monster had been weakened. The knight reminded him that he had previously stated that this was not the time for internal conflict. The leader shouted that this was unfair and questioned whether this was even a quest to go on. He felt that the difference in difficulty was too great, especially after the learning experience of the first 10 floors. Teo intervened and urged everyone to remain calm. Teo assured them that they could handle the challenge, for the tower never gives impossible tasks. He reminded the leader that they were not mere hunters. The leader was a captain of the Empire's royal guard, and it was his duty to lead them. They couldn't clear the stage with just hunters. They needed to convince and rally, treating them like real people. Teo turned to the Sword Saint, recognizing him as the captain of the knights. He noted that a country with the captain of the knights and the royal guards crossing swords with each other would not be able to defend itself against outside threats. They had been given leadership roles, and now was the time to fulfill their duties. Teo then asked the knight to help find the king and the civil officials in the throne room. Without their leader, it would be difficult to effectively control the empire. The knight agreed to help, and Teo turned to the investigator, recognizing his role as commander. Teo expressed his dislike for hunters like the investigator, but recognized the importance of his position. He told him to go to the walls and boost the morale of the soldiers, as the walls were crucial to the defense. If the walls were breached, it would be the end. The investigator promised to defend the walls with his life, emphasizing his commitment to keep his promises. Teo announced that he would go to the front and take command. When he went to the front, he was surprised to see the Black Witch appear in front of him. He called her Mistress Witch. She corrected him, asking him to call her Mistress Black Dragon. Teo asked how she came out of nowhere, and she explained that teleportation was one of her skills, allowing her to move to any place she saw. The spirit suggested that Teo let the Black Witch kill him, since teleportation was such a powerful skill. Teo asked her why she was here instead of going ahead to the castle. The Black Witch replied that she came to take him to the castle because she saw something on the 11th floor. She believed that Teo wielded a sword that worked for the Empire and they could use it to boost the morale of the soldiers. She emphasized that it was Teo that the soldiers on the wall wanted, not her. The Black Witch reached out to him and offered to make an agreement. She explained that in order for her to teleport him, they would need to make a clear verbal agreement. Teo hesitated, noting that teleportation was usually a rank S skill, and he found it odd that she had revealed his limitations. He wondered if it was okay for her to reveal that information, that it could be her trump card. The Black Witch found his remark odd and reminded him that, according to him, she was the Chancellor of the Empire. She thought it was quite obvious for a Chancellor to use her trump card to defend her country. Calling out to Teo, she emphasized that there was no time to waste and he only needed to agree, no matter how simple it seemed. Teo caught her hand and agreed to use her skills. As they teleported away, Teo reflected on the fact that, even though they called them an empire, those were no different from humans. Even if they were just illusions, their fears were real. Landing on the castle wall, Teo started to express his gratitude, but the Black Witch interrupted him, not wanting to send him away, showing the younger one her bad sides. She noticed that she hadn't become a guild master by sitting still. She then turned to the soldiers of the Empire, urging them to rise. She asked if they really believed that the stone walls would protect them. She reminded them that the true defenders of the Empire were the soldiers themselves. The soldiers looked at her, realizing that she was the Chancellor. The Black Witch continued her speech, urging them to rise and emphasizing that although the walls may one day fall and their homes may perish, but as long as the soldiers stand strong, the empire will not fall. She urged them to rise up as the last walls of the empire, as warriors who are the empire itself, and fight for the empire and for themselves. She raised Teo's hand with his glowing sword and proclaimed that God was with them. At that moment, a message appeared, saying that the goddess of protection thanked them for the choice they had made and that she was giving up the last remnants of her power. A bright glow erupted from Teo's sword and enveloped the entire battlefield. As the light of the sword illuminated the battlefield, the soldiers noticed that the rain had stopped. They exclaimed in awe, realizing that the goddess must be protecting the empire. However, Teo, upon reflection, believed that the sword's power was not unusual. It was simply stopping the rain in its illuminated path. Still, he realized that sometimes even small things could make a big difference, especially for people who had almost nothing left. At the very beginning, there was no one in the throne room because all the higher-ups had left the country. The tower had chosen this empire as a stage, like abandoned children being left in a mansion on the 10th floor. The Black Witch shouted to the soldiers to stand up and behave appropriately in front of the chancellor. As the soldiers began to rise, she breathed a sigh of relief. Noticing Teo looking at her, she asked him why he was looking at her like that. She wondered if he had seen her give a speech before. She mentioned that there were many communists in their country, although she did not personally approve of them, but she admired their oratorical skills, and she claimed to have learned that skill from them. Teo was stunned by her words, and the spirit assumed she was trying to make a joke, but it didn't work. The Black Witch turned to Teo and asked him about his future plans and suggested that he delay the enemy at the castle walls. Teo agreed to her suggestion. He pondered over the Black Dragon Master's S-rank skill, which was teleportation. However, he thought about the fact that if they flew directly to their destination, they might instantly find themselves surrounded by monsters. Teo suggested a strategy to create a one-on-one situation with the Demon King by taking the hunters with him, while the soldiers would hold back the enemy. He suggested that if the king put up more monsters to break through the castle walls, the Black Witch should teleport him in front of the king. After hearing Teo's plan, the Black Witch asked if he was going to sacrifice himself. Teo realized that anyone would question his plan, but he knew that death did not mean defeat to him. So he answered confidently, saying that he planned to win and had a hidden ace up his sleeve. The Black Witch recognized that hunters usually had secret weapons and hoped that Teo's weapon would prove strong enough to stand up to the boss. The Demon King spoke, accusing the goddess of pathetic tricks and downplaying the importance of resistance. He rejected the power of light and said that those who do not harvest the rice grains of tomorrow have no use for it. He told the goddess that the time she spent worrying about these miserable things made her miserable too. The king prepared his sword and said, "Then let me show you my light also." A powerful swing of the sword unleashed a devastating force, destroying everything in its path. Soldiers flew into the air and buildings collapsed to the ground. Suddenly a message appeared, announcing the death of a warrior who was not a pawn of the Demon King. The Black Witch, shocked by this turn of events, realized that the direction of the attack was towards the throne room. She announced that the Sword Saint, the investigator, and the leader would head there with their troops. The knight was tasked to search for the king, which shocked Teo. Teo realized that it was the Countess who had just died, and she was not a traitor. The Black Witch became furious at the Countess's death and cursed her in anger for dying first. However, Teo interrupted her and pointed out that the Countess's death meant the tower's connection to the outside world. The Black Witch urged him to focus. She emphasized that not even the Demon King could deliver such powerful blows all the time. She instructed Teo to defend the fallen castle door with her. Teo glanced at the mini-map and noticed that the Demon King's army had changed formations. He wondered if they were trying to break through. He agreed with her thoughts and held out his hand to her. The Black Witch quickly grabbed his arm and activated her teleportation skill. Teo looked around and realized that none of his allies were watching him on the front lines. The spirit addressed him, calling him a zombie and emphasizing how important it was to hold back the enemy alone. To win the war, Teo had to become a beacon of hope, even if only for a moment. The duration didn't matter, just as long as he showed how bravely he held back the monsters alone. The spirit emphasized that true heroes were not defined by surviving for 100 years, but by providing those much-needed seconds to others. Teo pulled out a bottle of elixir and drank it in one go. The spirit reminded him that they had promised to teach him swordsmanship until they got to the 20th floor. Although it was still a little early, it was time for a practical lesson. The spirit instructed Teo on the proper way to stand on his feet, positioning, asking him to put his back foot at an angle and his front foot pointing forward. He then told Teo to focus. He explained that there were 2 goblins up ahead. He noted that their eyesight was poor and their eyes were even closed due to the dust clouds. With the help of the Shiny the Sword Saint, Teo was able to use their vision. The spirit explained that in a fight, it is not the absolute second that matters, but the relative second. He told him to steal his opponent's sight to win that 1 second. Teo prepared himself, and in that second, his heart beat a little faster, and his blade would become even faster than his heart. The spirit called out to him and declared that it was time for him to become a hero. As Teo relentlessly slaughtered the goblins, the spirit instructed him, emphasizing the importance of treating each enemy individually. When each goblin was on the verge of defeat, Teo would swiftly move on to the next, performing the smooth and seamless dance of his sword. The spirit stated that 1 second had elapsed up to that point. He then advised him not to pause between swings, urging him to maintain a continuous flow of attacks, like a musical composition. Just as in music a lower tone sets the stage for a higher tone, Teo was encouraged to link each strike with the next, using his sword in a harmonious rhythm. The spirit emphasized that wielding a sword is essentially a battle against time. Beginners can barely stay on their feet for a second, while experienced swordsmen can dominate for 5 seconds. The key is to seize every moment and not rely on just one strike, but to anticipate the next move. While normal people let time pass naturally, a true fencer must actively interact with it to truly live. Addressing Teo as a swordsman, the spirit suggested that he hold out for 10 seconds, reminding him of the difficulties involved in becoming a true swordsman. Teo, however, was hesitant. He wondered why the tower had bestowed exceptional skill on someone he thought was a psychopath. He wondered if overcoming the trials of the tower required such ruthlessness and if he should emulate the Flame Emperor. Dismissing that thought, Teo made a firm decision. He vowed to surpass not only the Flame Emperor, but even the 100th floor of the tower. He was determined to prove that one didn't have to follow in the footsteps of a madman to achieve greatness. As Teo continued to fight the monsters, a message materialized in front of him that his existence had become clearer and his level as a hunter had been raised to D rank. Recognizing Teo's achievement, the spirit congratulated him as 30 seconds passed, acknowledging his growing skill. As Sword Saint entered the battle, he turned his attention to Teo and smiled and introduced himself. Upon reflecting on this encounter, Teo realized this was the second time a hunter of the highest rank had introduced himself to him. And each time it was a different person, unlike himself. This revelation filled Teo with both confidence and confidence that based on his previous experiences, he would be able to accomplish feats beyond his wildest dreams. In response to his smile, Teo smiled back at him as well. The Sword Saint suggested that they fight together, combining their forces. And just like that, a hunter of the first rank, a captain of the Empire's Night Order, led a combined attack. At that moment, the investigator arrived on the scene, apologizing for his tardiness and acknowledging that Teo had tried to buy them time. As befitted his rank, the guild leader swore that he would be in charge of them from now on, thanking Teo for his contribution. He gave orders to all present, ordering them to eradicate any threats to the Empire and urged them not to back down. He emphasized that the goddess was on their side. Amidst the ongoing battle, Teo's thoughts were focused on one thing: moving forward. As he fought, the leader approached him and complimented him on his performance, explaining that his delay was due to his work with the guards and members of his guild. The leader, as a member of the Heavenly Martial clan, promised to demonstrate why they had such a prestigious reputation. Noticing that Teo was not reacting in any way, he decided that he must be in a trance and expressed his admiration for him. Determined to return the favor, the leader took command of the left squad, granting Teo the privilege of fighting beside him, assuring him that no one had ever died fighting on his right side. A knight arrived, apologized for being late, and explained that although he had found the emperor, but he had already taken poison to end his life. The sword saint reassured him, telling him that taking part in the attack would do more good than leading the troops. Noticing Teo, the knight inquired what he was doing. Suddenly, the Demon King spoke, belittling their efforts and claiming that even the goddess who watched over them was weakening. He challenged them, raising his sword and demanding to show what they could do. In response, someone shouted to the Black Witch, urging her to use the mirror. Determined not to miss the opportunity, she took their advice and activated the mirrors, ordering them to disperse. She then summoned Sword Saint and Leader, and the two quickly repelled the Demon King's attacks and approached her. When everyone was gathered in one place, the Black Witch announced her plan to teleport them in front of the Demon King, ordering everyone to stay close to her. She shouted to Teo, urging him to hold on. He looked back at her outstretched hand, and she warned him that if he disobeyed, they would leave him behind. At that moment, Teo stared wistfully at the scene before him, realizing that it was about to disappear. He recalled his memories of those hunters and realized that even if they forgot everything that had happened, it wouldn't undo the fact that it had happened. He compared it to a man dying on the first floor and a soul dying on the 99th floor. But despite that, they managed to accomplish their goal. The spirit turned to Teo as his partner and stated that they intended to defeat the mob boss. Teo grabbed the Black Witch's hand, determined to continue on his way. He admitted that he believed he was stronger and could handle the situation better. The Black Witch then used her skill and they teleported in front of the Demon King. The Demon King found their trust in each other intriguing, considering there was a traitor among them. However, he doubted that they believed that a simple tattered rag could protect them. From surprise, Teo let go of the Black Witch's hand, and she cried out in alarm. Teo rushed to attack the Demon King, knowing that this might be their last meeting. He inwardly apologized and expressed his hope to meet them again in the next life, even if they wouldn't remember what happened that day. The Demon King mocked Teo's stupidity and asked if he was going to kill him. However, Teo smiled defiantly, showed his middle finger, and explained that he should be killed by the Demon King instead. Messages appeared announcing Teo's death and that the skill requirements had been met. Teo would receive the monster skill, Demon King, at random. Not satisfied after his death, Teo announced that it was time to start the second round. A notification appeared in front of him, informing him that he had accidentally copied the skill of the monster, the Demon King. But Teo was left with another doubt. He couldn't help but wonder why the tower had given immense power to such people and empowered a person like him, even though he thought he was nothing. He speculated that perhaps the tower was disappointed in the hunter's attitude. The spirit, seeing the skill cards, offered to read the skills he had learned from the monster. Teo readily accepted the offer. The spirit began to list the skills. The first skill revolved around the concept of invisibility. It refuted the notion that if something could not be seen, it did not exist. It called for the discovery of the truth and the consequences of ignorance. Innocent bloodshed does not exist in this world, and heaven willingly sheds purple blood, but only that blood witnessed by man will become the rain that falls. Teo pondered the fact that the Flame Emperor would undoubtedly have caused widespread destruction on the 10th floor. He wondered why the tower was not disappointed by his actions. No sooner had Teo delved into his thoughts than the spirit revealed the next skill, which used a person's emotions as fuel to strengthen the aura. The stronger the emotion, the more powerful the aura became. It didn't matter what emotion it was. The fire path burned regardless of the fuel it used. However, gradually, the user would become dependent on that emotion. Teo had come to the conclusion that there were hidden tasks on every floor of the tower. Therefore, he was sure that the 12th floor was no exception. The spirit moved on to introduce the last skill that allowed him to summon the people he killed as monsters. However, the summoned creatures did not retain their previous skills and memories, only appearing as basic monsters such as goblins, orcs, zombies, or skeletons. This skill can only be used once per week. After familiarizing himself with the 3 skills, Teo decided that these were the ones he needed the most. He confidently declared his decision, even though the spirit disagreed. Teo felt that this skill would be useful for clearing up to at least the 20th floor. While the spirit questioned Teo's choice, Teo chose a skill card and expressed anticipation of what he would accomplish with it. He then turned to the spirit and inquired about the Sword Saint's daily schedule. The spirit confirmed that he was aware of his schedule, and Teo asked for more details about the evening activities. The spirit agreed to provide the requested information. Teo soon received notifications that the skill selection process was complete and the skill was copied. He was informed that he would be returning to a point 24 hours earlier. Another message informed him that his hunter rank was now D rank, so the penalty for his skill was coming into effect, that is, recreating the injury received by the enemy who killed him. So Teo witnessed the Demon King's injury, but more on that later. Black Witch asked Teo about his decision to leave, to which he replied that he needed to prepare for the opening of the 11th floor if he didn't want to fall behind the others. The Black Witch expressed doubt that he could prepare without knowing what the 11th floor was. He inwardly admitted that there was no problem up to the 10th floor. However, on the 12th floor where the Demon King appeared, he had doubts. The Black Witch suddenly noticed his worried expression and asked him if he was okay, if he was hurt. Teo assured her that he was fine, but he became agitated when he saw how many amazing people like her were gathered here. Teo revealed that he did indeed know what the 11th floor was, and even had information on finding it. He received this information as a reward for passing the 10th floor. This revelation shocked everyone present. The Black Witch guessed that Teo wanted to share the information with them as well. Teo agreed, but on the condition that they would do him one favor in the future. He could not reveal the nature of the favor at the moment, but he assured them that it would not endanger anyone's life and would not involve acquiring money. If the request seemed impossible when the time came, they could refuse him. The investigator considered the condition favorable and agreed to accept the information. The Countess also agreed, emphasizing that they still had the option to back out. The leader expressed his willingness to listen to Teo for the time being, and the knight saw nothing wrong with the deal and agreed as well. Teo decided that the first stage was now past. He proceeded to give the audience details about the empire from floors 11 through 20. They began to discuss the implications of the textbook only being valid up to the 10th floor, realizing that from the 11th floor they could be involved in large-scale battles. Teo believed that with this new information, they would be able to get through the 11th floor without difficulty. As he was about to leave, he approached the knight and asked to go for a walk together, wanting his advice on some matters. The knight agreed and said that if it would not take too long, he would be happy to accompany Teo. Teo stated that he only needed 30 minutes of his time. The knight smiled back, agreeing and expressing his willingness to accept his request for a meeting. As Teo and the knight walked, the spirit informed him that the Sword Saint was following them. Teo tried to sense the Sword Saint, but couldn't detect anything. He asked the spirit to confirm that the old man had the invisibility skill, so he was hard to spot. He ordered the spirit to make sure that the Sword Saint was indeed following him. He remembered a previous encounter that had left him with an unpleasant feeling, and he wanted to resolve before they went further up the tower. He realized that the relationship between the Sword Saint and the guild leaders was strained, and if he drew his sword against Teo, it would automatically make him an enemy of the guild leaders. He realized that the news of the traitor would cause significant damage and could lead to their downfall. Clearing up the misunderstanding seemed to him a necessary step to avoid such a damaging outcome. The knight asked where he was taking them, noting that if they went that way they would pass through a dark neighborhood. Teo said he wanted to introduce him to a certain store. In his reflections, Teo revealed that he had purposely made himself visible based on the spirit's information about the Sword Saint's schedule. His goal was to lure the swordsman into chasing after him. However, the knight was unaware of this. Confused, the knight asked Teo about the store. He explained that it was run by a talented chemist who was as yet nameless, but had great potential. He hoped that the knight would be able to visit the store and perhaps buy some of the products. Knight smiled and asked if Teo was being serious, to which Teo replied in the affirmative and stated that he had no reason to lie. Teo realized that Knight must have activated his lie detector. Knight asked if anything strange was going on, expressing concern. Teo assured him that he only needed his help and that if anything happened, it would be him, not Knight, who would be in danger. He asked him for his trust. In his thoughts, Teo assumed that the truth would likely be revealed by the knight's lie detector skills. The knight apologized for finding everything suspicious and agreed to continue on his way. Soon they pulled up to the store and the alchemist greeted him enthusiastically. Teo expressed surprise that she was still working. She informed him that although her business hours were over, her store was always open to him since he was her first regular customer. She noticed the knight's presence and inquired about his identity. Teo introduced him as the deputy head of the guild, also known as the Knight. The alchemist was shocked by this revelation and exclaimed about his prestigious status, puzzled as to why he had come to a place like her store. Stunned, the alchemist crouched down on the ground and expressed concern about possible detention for substances. She stated that despite working in the alley, she had never produced harmful drugs and lived with a clear conscience. She asked that there not be an investigation. The knight was stunned by her reaction and remained silent. Teo watched and assumed that the knight was probably using his lie detector, and so the alchemist's truthful words confused him. Teo reassured her. He told her not to worry, and praised her as a capable and kind chemist. He expressed his belief that her talents deserved more recognition, and he would like to introduce her with the deputy head of the guild. Teo asked the alchemist to provide the knight with a sample of the potion for testing, hinting that if the effect was favorable, an exclusive contract with the guild could be made. Teo felt that supplying potions to the guild would benefit the guild and make their lives easier. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she shook Teo's hand and called him an angel. She thanked him for helping her in the past when her store was in danger of being sold and for placing an important order for her. She was immensely grateful that he was now connecting her with other people. At that moment, Sword Saint entered the store and interrupted the conversation. He asked everyone but Teo to leave the place. In a cold tone, he made it clear that he wanted to speak to him alone. The knight asked the Sword Saint what purpose he wanted to speak to Teo. The Sword Saint brushed off his concerns, saying he must be hard of hearing, and repeated his request, asking everyone to leave except Teo. The knight was skeptical of Sword Saint's intentions and warned him against attacking Hunter Teo, as it would be seen as a declaration of war against the top 5 guilds. He made it clear that the Avengers Guild would not be left out. Sword Saint placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and commented that all the guilds were in collusion with each other. The knight became increasingly confused by the situation and admitted that Sword Saint had been reported for hunting people in the past, but emphasized that the Avengers Guild would not tolerate his actions if they were done openly and in his presence. He vowed to stop it at the cost of his life. Puzzled by his determination, the Sword Saint questioned his confidence in stopping him. The knight admitted that he was not sure, but declared his willingness to fight him with all his might and die in the process. He warned that his actions would brand him as a murderer who ruined an innocent man. The knight advised the Sword Saint to get down to business if he wanted to live as a murderer for the rest of his time. Teo recalled one of the Sword Saint's weaknesses that he had discovered during the previous meeting: his vulnerability to innocent people. Teo had brought with him the only leader from the leading guilds who could be considered innocent based on the Sword Saint's aggressive ethical beliefs, a knight who had 0 kills. In addition, the alchemist stepped forward and pleaded with the Sword Saint, calling Teo her benefactor and vowing not to forgive him if he harmed him. She recounted a recent incident where bandits had rioted in her shop and asked the Sword Saint to leave. Teo pondered the strange situation, realizing that despite his lack of strength, no match for the Sword Saint, good-hearted people like the knight and the alchemist could stop him. The knight offered to take on the Sword Saint if the latter decided to continue. However, the Sword Saint let go of the hilt of his sword and started to walk away, stating that today was not the day. Teo was relieved that the conditions of Stage 2 had been met, and he was able to briefly talk to the Sword Saint before he tried to kill him. As Sword Saint was leaving, Teo came out of the store and called out to him, telling him that he would be waiting for him alone in an open area on the north side of town at noon the next day. Teo suggested that Sword Saint come or not, but emphasized that he was ready to reveal what kind of man he was. The knight also joined Teo outside and expressed his disbelief about meeting the assassin. Teo asked the knight if the Sword Saint was known to be an assassin. The knight explained that he wasn't widely known as an assassin, but the 5 guild leaders knew about it. He said that Sword Saint had lost his daughter and son-in-law, who lived in the outside world, to the assassin. He mentioned that Sword Saint was an elderly man who kept to himself, and she had little information about the details of his past. He admitted to keeping tabs on him, but that he had no proof. Knight emphasized that their conversation should remain private. The spirit confirmed the knight's information and said that the Sword Saint had shared the story with him before. His grandson and granddaughter had barely survived that incident. Teo asked why Spirit was only telling it now, and Spirit simply replied that he hadn't asked before. The knight admitted that he understood the Sword Saint's feelings as someone who encountered criminals in his work for the guild. There were times when he questioned whether such people were worth letting live and thought about destroying those who deserved to die. At times, such a prospect tempted him. Glancing at Teo, he noted that each of the guild leaders had a story to tell, implying that he would eventually learn about them since he had joined their ranks. However, he also warned him of the existence of deeply corrupt places, wondering how he would react when faced with such an environment. He turned his attention away from the conversation, moving on to more practical matters, and inquired about the cost of potions in this place. Budget constraints were a problem for the guild. Therefore, he hoped that the cost of potions wouldn't be too high. The next day, people were eagerly awaiting the opening of the 11th floor. Teo watched the atmosphere, feeling similar to the previous attempt, but with a distinct difference, and that difference was himself. The Sword Saint appeared in front of him and commented on his loneliness. He thought that Teo's confidence in facing him alone was likely due to his extensive experience with assassinations. Teo's thoughts were distracted by his sympathy for the Sword Saint, and a pain for him stirred in his heart. He then turned to the Sword Saint and informed him that he knew why he wanted to kill him. The Sword Saint responded by noting his willingness to confront him in private and hinting that Teo realized what sins he had committed. Teo asked a question, assuming that Sword Saint's motivation stemmed from the detective's skill, insight. Sword Saint expressed surprise at Teo's knowledge, which led Teo to ask Sword Saint for trust in what he was about to reveal. Teo realized that earning someone's trust wasn't easy, as everyone had their own stubborn beliefs. In the case of the Sword Saint, it was all down to his abilities, particularly the detective's discernment. He realized that the Sword Saint had lived up to his stubbornness, and now he had to challenge and convince him that it was wrong. He knew it would be a daunting task, but he was willing to risk his life. Teo eventually revealed to the Sword Saint, shocking him that he was a prophet. Teo corrected himself and clarified that he possessed a skill similar to prophecy. Because of this skill, he learned that the Sword Saint possessed the detective's insight skill. As a result, he realized that the Sword Saint would try to kill him and inquired about the reason why. He explained that because of the detective's insight skill, the Sword Saint saw the number of Teo's kills above his head. The Sword Saint listened silently, and after a while he asked Teo to guess how many fingers on his left hand he held, confident that it would not be difficult for the prophet. Teo understood his approach and wondered about the method he had chosen. The Sword Saint stated that if Teo didn't guess correctly, he would assume that he had lied to him. As the Sword Saint expected, Teo quickly drew his knife, but before the Sword Saint could bear his sword, Teo killed himself. The Sword Saint was shocked at this turn of events. A message appeared in front of Teo, stating that he was returning to the point 24 hours ago. When Teo reappeared in front of the Sword Saint, he started the guessing game again. Before he could finish, Teo realized that he was trying to hide his left hand behind his back and asked him to guess how many fingers were on it. Teo urged him to believe him, emphasizing that it was impossible to get to the 12th floor safely without him. The Sword Saint pointed his finger at Teo, expressing his doubts and suggesting that his skill might not be prophecy, but insight or mind reading. Teo acknowledged this suspicion and realized that once would not be enough to convince the Sword Saint. Teo died again and returned to the point 24 hours earlier. The Sword Saint pointed his sword at him, demanding further proof and asking him to demonstrate that he wasn't playing some trick. Teo realized that it was impossible to change his mind. As before, he died again and returned to the point 24 hours before. Teo, not losing hope, pleaded with him, emphasizing that killing him would cause many casualties on the 12th floor. He realized that it was not easy to convince such a stubborn man who had reached the pinnacle of skill. So he died again and returned to the point 24 hours earlier. Once again coming face to face with the Sword Saint, Teo made a plea for faith. Even though he knew it wouldn't be easy, he was determined to convince the Sword Saint, even if it took weeks. Each time he would die again and return to the same moment 24 hours ago. Standing in front of the Sword Saint, Teo reflected on how long he had been dying, which surpassed the lifespan of the Sword Saint himself. He then suggested to the Sword Saint that rather than asking to be spared for life, he should follow him, see his actions firsthand, and decide for himself whether Teo deserved to die. However, he realized that the Sword Saint still didn't fully believe his words. He pondered his next move and realized that he needed to strike a decisive blow. He said that he would share something with Sword Saint, information that he himself had told Teo in the distant future. Teo claimed that if he revealed this information, he would believe that he was indeed a prophet. Curious, Sword Saint asked what this information was, and Teo replied with a single phrase, "Sword Emperor." Sword Saint and Sword Spirit were shocked to hear this revelation. Teo admitted that he didn't know whose nickname it was, but he remembered that Sword Saint had said that this information would be enough. Realizing the importance of his statement, the Sword Saint made a decision. He announced that he would observe Teo's actions, words, and behavior for the next 5 days. Only then would he be able to determine whether Teo deserved to die or whether he truly possessed the qualities of a prophet. Teo accepted the Sword Saint's offer, expressing gratitude from the depths of his heart. He bowed respectfully to the Sword Saint, appreciating the opportunity he had been given. Upon reflection, Teo realized that his plan had succeeded. He made a pact with the guild leaders and created a foundation that prevented the Sword Saint from immediately attacking him. The Sword Saint probably trusted him for now, considering that Teo had fulfilled the condition of stopping the sacrifices of innocents on the 12th floor. With a satisfied smile, Teo said goodbye to the Sword Saint, saying he would see him in the next stage. He said, "Pass it on," and moved to the 11th floor. At that moment, the voice of the goddess rang out, blessing all those who were climbing the tower and wishing them good luck on their journey. Teo arrived at the battlefield on the 11th floor. Just then, someone warned the others to be careful of the arrows. The hunters dodged the arrows and were confused by the unfolding events. Suddenly the commander appeared and offered them a task, urging the warriors to join in the attempt to save the empire. Teo pondered the situation, noting that everything seemed to be following the same pattern as before. However, at this moment, the Black Witch gave a command. "Black Dragon, assemble." From that moment on, the Black Dragon took charge of the war. The Celestial Martial Clan and the Avengers Guild were tasked to lead the left flank and break through the enemies, while the rest were to lead the right wing. The Black Dragon was to lead the attack through the center. The Black Witch said that those who were dissatisfied with the command could speak up after the war, but for now, they should focus on killing more monsters if they had the chance. The hunters, determined, began to attack the monsters, and their battle cries echoed throughout the field. Watching this spectacle, the commander paid tribute to the warriors from the other world who fought fearlessly against the monsters. Encouraging the soldiers of his empire, the commander rallied them by asking them to join the battle and follow his example. It looked like the goddess was still protecting their empire. Amidst the chaos, Spirit spoke to Teo, expressing concern that his role had become less prominent and it might affect his reputation compared to last time. Teo smiled and admitted that this was indeed true, but it didn't particularly bother him. The spirit smiled back, noting Teo's spiritual growth. However, Teo's attention was suddenly drawn to something amiss. When he turned around, he saw the Sword Saint standing behind him, shocked by the unexpected encounter. Teo wondered why Sword Saint was here. The one explained that he was watching Teo, referring to his request to observe him for 5 days before deciding whether to kill him. Teo, stammering, replied to the Sword Saint, expressing his concern about being watched all the time. The Sword Saint confirmed that he did indeed intend to keep an eye on him. Worried about the rewards that would be given out for his contribution, Teo asked Sword Saint to participate in killing monsters as well. In response, The Sword Saint swung his own and easily dealt with a group of goblins, assuring Teo that he would handle them from time to time. Teo thought to himself that the Sword Saint was a stubborn old man. Nevertheless, he continued walking towards the Black Witch. He was intercepted by two hunters who demanded to know about his dealings with the guild leader. At that moment, the Black Witch turned around, recognizing them. Recognizing her busy commander duties, she gave them 30 seconds to state their needs. Teo informed the Black Witch that he had a reward for clearing the 10th floor. The Black Witch replied nonchalantly when asked what that meant. Teo then handed over the minimap as a reward, explaining that it gave a complete view of the battlefield, including the location of enemies and allies. Shocked, the Black Witch turned around and checked his words. He emphasized that he had no reason to lie and was telling the truth. The Black Witch expressed her displeasure that he had not given her this information earlier. She demanded to be told where the main monster was located, to which Teo replied that it was surrounded by other monsters and therefore difficult to see. Nevertheless, based on the map, he pointed out his approximate location. The Black Witch impatiently asked him to agree with her decision to use his skills. He hesitated, but finally agreed, stating that he supported the use of the Black Dragon leader's skills. He noted her determination and realized that her true nature showed through when she was busy. In an instant, the Black Witch activated her teleportation ability, and they both flew up into the air. She asked where the boss monster was, and Teo hurriedly pointed it out. Once above the boss monster, Black Witch asked Teo if he wielded a sword. He confidently replied that he was capable of killing the monster. In response, the Black Witch threw him down and urged him to continue. Swinging his sword emitting a red aura, he brought it down on the Goblin King. He chopped the king with a single blow, and the surrounding goblins were stunned by the sight. Teo looked at them with a cold gaze and warned them against further resistance, causing the goblins to scatter in fear. Watching this, the hunters cheered and encouraged the others to pursue and defeat the fleeing goblins. At that moment, the Black Witch shouted with delight, expressing her joy at this turn of events. She looked at Teo with rapt attention and extolled his accomplishments, marveling at the fact that they had cleared the scene in less than an hour and suffered minimal casualties, believing that less than 50 or even 30 hunters had died. Teo, however, looked at her and pondered. He reflected on her previous unemotional behavior. He reflected on the fact that many hunters had died due to lack of direction, and now she was happy because there were fewer victims. It seemed surprisingly simple to him how her emotions related to the number of deaths. Trying to calm her down, Teo noticed that she was getting too excited and asked her to calm down a bit. The Black Witch objected, saying that excitement could only be expressed when it was truly great. She praised him again, expressing her satisfaction with his work and noting the surprisingly low loss rate. She praised him for being like a new hero to them, even though he could have gone through the level alone and gotten all the rewards. The Black Witch looked at Teo, warning him that the press would be swarming around him from now on, and he should be ready for it. He looked at her, agreeing that he would be given attention. He reflected, however, that while being treated as a hero and the envy of many would give him great joy, it could not compare to the recognition of the people who had worked hard with him. Teo recognized the merits of all those who had worked tirelessly. He wanted to live a life worthy of their recognition and protect them, lest they be made fools of by creatures like the Demon King or humiliated by figures like the Flame Emperor. He longed for their respect and recognition, even if it seemed like a pipe dream. In this changing world, he was forced to change himself as well. An announcement appeared announcing that raid dues were being counted, and shortly thereafter another announcement appeared confirming that the counting was complete. The raid contribution rankings appeared on the screen, and Teo was in first place. He noticed that the rankings had changed from last time. Another announcement notified the raid participants that the high-ranked participants would enter, and until they received their rewards, the rest of the participants would not be able to go up to the 12th floor. The Black Witch looked at Teo and expressed her optimism, suggesting that they could quickly traverse the 20th floor with the pace they had. However, Teo realized that they would have to pay a price if they acted without careful planning. He realized that if they were deprived of their only talent capable of communicating with the outside world of the 12th floor, the price they would have to pay would be too high, and they would be risking the lives of not only 5,000 people, but tens or hundreds of thousands. He made the decision to shoulder that burden and protect them. When they were taken to the 12th floor, the investigator approached Teo, expressing surprise at his ability to detect the boss monster, and inquired if he was the reward from the previous floor. However, Teo held out his hand, signaling for him to wait. He had something important to tell everyone. Teo noticed that the Sword Saint was not taking any action, and realized that the situation had changed. He assumed that even the Sword Saint would no longer attack him. Teo then addressed the group, reminding them of his request from the day before. He emphasized that he needed them to listen to him and fulfill his request without hesitation. He asked them to do nothing and stay put for the next 5 days. He confidently promised, if they complied with his request, he would clear the 20th floor within 5 days.